Well, let's start.
Let's start. Give it to me. I'll serve.
Right.
Hello, everyone, again, and welcome to the exchange. Today we have with us Luke. Luke, would like to say who you are? What do you do?
I am a video production guy. I do everything: edit, shooting,
Yeah.
storyboarding, scripting, everything you can think of, and I produce this podcast.
Best I wanted to say that this is the man who's behind those cameras. But not today.
Not today.
Not today. Today he's in front of us.
And not with Miroslav's t-shirt,
That's right. But
because it would not fit me or my arm.
But Miroslav offered to wear this shirt.
Yes.
And we said no, collectively.
I don't want to be glad wrapped on camera.
Okay.
So I have a shirt on that I can actually move in, so I can reach for my own glass.
Good.
Huh?
All right. Cheers.
Magical.
Cheers.
Cheers, man.
Thank you for being on the show. Thank you.
Plum Slivovitz. I love
It's
it.
very nice. Similar to actually to rakia. Very similar.
Yeah, very, very similar.
Very similar.
Is your shirt unbuttoned? What are you doing?
Can't believe it.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Well, there's a werewolf stalking me.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Luke.
Yes.
Thank you for
Hit
being
me.
on the show. Thank you very much. And thank you for your hard work. Thank you for editing all those videos. I believe our viewers really appreciate the quality of the
It's
product
been
you
a wild
produce.
ride so far, man.
Yeah.
Man, this guy could fuck off.
Yeah, this Jeff is flying around. Doesn't want to leave us.
Yeah.
All right, tell us, what is your story? How did you get where you got? How did you end up in filming?
Okay.
Did you actually start in the porn industry?
I swear to God, this fly. Go away.
These are the rumors.
Man, no. However, I was actually offered a porn job once.
Did you?
And funny story, I had my mate who's a cameraman who messaged me and he said, and I misread it because I was actually on a shoot already, and I thought he said, do you want to film a promo for $2,200 for the day? And I didn't message him for a couple of hours. And I went back after the shoot and he didn't message me back. And I went back after the shoot and I reread it and he said, do you want to film a porno? And of course I messaged him quite quickly after that.
Yeah.
But the job was gone.
Do you
Porn
think,
pays well,
Yeah.
but I mean, you don't want to always be wearing a raincoat when you're on the job.
But is it difficult to actually become an actor? Do you think there are vacant positions quite often?
Man, who knows?
Well, you should know.
I don't know about the acting side of things. I just shoot stuff. Whatever's in front of me, I'll shoot stuff. I always tell people when I'm on these jobs that I'm industry whore. I'll whore out to whoever will pay me.
Okay. but look, when you shoot a scene, how long are they? Are they actually like 20 minutes scenes,
What?
30 minutes
How long
scenes?
is what?
A scene when you film. Do you need to shoot it again a couple of times? Or it's just one?
What kind of scene? You got to be specific here. Because I do all sorts of different stuff. Like from doco stuff to like...
From which one?
From documentary stuff to...
No, we're talking about pornography now.
I've never shot a porno.
Okay. No, I thought it's actually your expertise. Okay.
No, I have never shot a porno. I've never shot a porno. However, I do have the gear.
04690994. This is actually my number.
That's
Joking.
right. Yeah. Details in the description.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I got into doing the video production side of things because I essentially, I honestly, I never knew what I wanted to do with my life. I left school when I was just legally able to, so I was 14 and 9 months back then. And
when you were 14, you left school.
I left school. Yeah. My
on your
parents,
your own decision.
I got, Jesus, some stories there. I got in a little bit of trouble at school because I essentially at the end of year 9, I had 79 or 80 different unexplained absences from school. So I just didn't rock up.
What were you doing?
Smoking weed.
Yeah. Just
having
school,
fun,
school
hanging out with school friends, all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
And yeah, look, essentially it got to that stage where my parents, who were extremely staunch Jehovah's Witnesses, freaked out. And I got a little bit too stoned one day and passed out in a shopping centre. And
I'm not sure you should have laughed.
yeah, it was funny. It was outside of Cash Converters, actually. And the bird that came in, that was working in there, came out, and she managed to somehow get my parents' phone number off me. I wasn't even able to speak. It was some bad stuff. And she said, and so my parents came and picked me up, and they said, like, obviously school's no good for you, and they decided that it was best if I just left. And so, yeah, look, that's sort of cutting a little bit out of the story without going into a huge amount of detail, I suppose. But
look, it sounds like you had a rough childhood. But what was the reason? Is it rough surrounding at home, or neighborhood?
No,
friends?
Nothing neighborhood-wise. We grew up in a small community called Tanoni outside of Taree on the east coast of Australia, or sort of northern side, and there was maybe 200 people there at the time. And we had a seemingly happy childhood. We were in the country. We moved into Taree after a little bit, and I think that's where I started year 3. And I was sent to a school that was like known as one of the roughest schools around. God knows why parents would send their kids there, but I was sent there, and that was rough. There was multiple police reports and all sorts of stuff involving me, just basically based off of all of the brutality of the kids and stuff like that. But look, the thing was that we were raised as Jehovah's Witnesses, and that meant that Tuesday night, Thursday night, Saturday morning, Sunday morning or afternoon, depending on what they changed it to, was all JW activities.
Like what?
So Tuesday night was a 2-hour church meeting. Thursday night was like an hour and a half church meeting. Saturday was essentially most of the day was out door knocking, trying to, preach to people and convert people. And then Sunday was another 2-hour meeting. Sometimes even on Sunday morning was more preaching. So
involving parents or just kids?
Everyone.
Okay.
So the thing was that back then, that's all we really knew. So I had 2 older sisters, and we didn't know any different. And my father and my mother were all in.
Yep.
All in. And, my father had very high aspirations to make it higher into the organisation, and he became one of the elders in the organisation. He was for a long time. And after a decent amount of time there, I believe, it was year 4, we moved into Newcastle, where it was essentially the same kind of thing. And through Newcastle, being in different schools there as well, because for some reason or another, my parents kept moving and moving. In fact, I was in 10 different schools in my entire school life.
Wow.
So I can only imagine what that was like for my sisters as well, but they just kept on moving.
Did they move because of the religion?
Don't know until this day. Running from something, perhaps. But come year 8, we had moved to Canberra. and that was sort of where I saw out high school. I never knew what I wanted to do, but I knew that there was a huge pressure always to excel in the religion. And if you wanted any kind of prospect of, having any kind of good woman or anything like that in the religion,
But how can you excel
had
in
to
religion?
you had to be doing the right things. You had to be going, and you had to be at every meeting. You had to be taking your notes. You were sitting there writing stuff down. And when they ask for comments from the audience, the hand has to go up. You've got to be active at all times. You've got to be out there doing their witnessing and their preaching and stuff on the Saturdays and Sundays and whatnot. Otherwise, you become one of the shunned people, the people that are looked upon as not being, well, I guess what people call them, like if they're Catholics, they call them submarine Catholics, right? They only poke their heads up when there's something ceremonial, you know what I mean? And those guys aren't really... When it comes down to it, in the Jehovah's Witnesses, they're not really looked upon as favourable for, for marriage or anything like that. So, essentially, it was something that was impressed upon us big time from when we were very, very young. And... it got to that point where come to where we were, my sister was of an age where, my middle sister was of an age where she could leave home, and she got a job and whatnot, and she decided to go and pursue a relationship of her own. My parents became aware pretty soon that this guy that she was pursuing was not of the religion. And they essentially decided that it was the best way forward for them and their status, obviously, because everything was status, right? It was the best way forward for them to actually decide to use me to try and out her, because everything was kept in secrecy. So much of the religion was all kept in secrecy.
So you were stepping in to separate your sister with a boyfriend who was not religious.
Yeah, he...
Sorry, the question, is he still alive?
Just.
Okay.
Just.
Did
and there's a whole story behind that too, do you? This fucking fly. Look, the whole thing for them was that they didn't want any of their kids to have projected something negative onto their image in the eyes of the organisation, right? And this is, I think, if I can speak more broadly for a second, I do think there is a very big lack of awareness as far as cults go in Australia. Like, I'm sure what have you seen on Netflix? There's like documentaries all over the place, like cult this and cult that, and I got sent off to a school camp that was like a cult, and I was in this cult, and I managed to break free, and this and that. And I think there's actually even one on Netflix called The Witnesses. But a lot of them are US based.
Yep.
We don't really see a lot of what goes on in Australia. And that's a problem.
Okay.
That's a problem.
All right, you're saying you've been part of the cult, which affected you, your family, your sister?
Sisters. Yeah, I had 2 older sisters.
Okay, and that's what happened with those relationships between your sister and the guy?
So, I mean, my parents used me to try and expose, well, they did use me to expose that relationship with my sister and her boyfriend at the time, who she ended up marrying and have 2 kids to. And they orchestrated her being kicked out of the religion publicly,
which is good, I guess,
for them. Sure. So essentially, once the elders in the organization have enough evidence, they say, they make a public announcement in front of however many people are in the congregation, which might be 150, 200 people. They say this person's kicked out of the religion, like they call it disfellowshipping. So it's a pretty public thing, and then that person that is kicked out then has to decide whether they're going to try and claw their way back into the religion. Which for anyone who's in that kind of position is pretty confronting, because the way they work, as with all cults, is isolationism. They work by basically making your entire life revolve around the religion, and the moment that you step outside of the bounds of what they want you to do, then you are cast out. Which means
in your own eyes, I would guess. Okay, and would the rest of the community still accept you?
Not in the slightest. So they are they're very stringent on the certain scriptural texts that say that if someone is cast out of the organisation, that you should not even say a greeting to them. And so you could have somebody that you know for 15, 20 years that you've been besties with, and if they are still wanting to be a prominent member of the Jehovah's Witnesses, they will not speak to you. They will walk straight past you and ignore you. And they work on this whole system of isolation. So, I mean, you look at the checklist of what a cult is, and the Jehovah's Witnesses will 100% tick every single box of those things. And that's what we grew up in.
And how many members are in Canberra?
I couldn't tell you. I know that there's probably about 6 million worldwide.
6 million, okay. And how powerful they are in this country?
Well, powerful enough to cover up what they have. And through the many years that I was in that organisation, I wasn't of any kind of rank. I was never baptised in the religion. So I couldn't technically be disfellowshipped because I never fully committed to it. So, which was a different scenario for my sister, of course. But there was certain things that I was privy to through friends and whatnot that I knew. There were certain people that were within the congregation there that was in Canberra that we knew that there was a guy there being kicked out because he was a pedo. We knew it. Everybody knew it. We didn't know the details, but we knew it. And this has come out over the years. I mean, people know that, through multiple different religions, that's what happens, right? People do the wrong thing. They go, that sucks, but to protect their religion, we're going to move them to a different area.
And that's what they've done with this person?
They do it over and over and over again.
Can police do anything about it?
Well, part of the big uproar has been that there's no official reporting system at all.
What about complaints?
They go through the elders, and anything that goes through the elders, they're discouraged from reporting anything to the police, and they're dealt with internally, and the majority of the time nothing comes of it. Because what they say, and one of the very, in my view, criminal things is that they say, oh, look, I'm really sorry this has happened to you, but do you have a witness that can corroborate your story? Oh, sorry, there was no one there while this was happening. Oh, well.
Well, when they complain, do they complain to the police as well, or they just complain directly?
Majority of the time, no. They're discouraged from doing all that sort of stuff because these cults work on completely a mentality of being insular. So bringing things external to the organisation is severely discouraged. And so that's sort of what we grew up in. And after my middle sister was cast out of the organisation, I started really asking some serious questions. My parents decided that that my eldest sister's husband was no good for her, and then orchestrated her being divorced from him or separated from him as well, which has caused unknown amounts of emotional trauma for her and her son at the time. But the religion itself essentially caused that much fracture in our family that many of us didn't speak to each other for a long, long time. So just recently I've got in contact again with my eldest sister, who I hadn't spoken to for 19 years.
Wow.
And her son, who was 3 and is 21, you know, and I used to spend a lot of time and all that sort of stuff. These things are the isolation that these organisations engineer is so damaging to families.
Question to you.
Yeah.
In your opinion, how similar this cult is in general to the religion? Christianity, let's say. Or Catholic Church. And how they're funding the operation. Again, 6 million members. Is it through donations or...
Donations.
Donations.
Yeah. It's a very good question too, because I wanted to come around to speaking about the Royal Commission on child sexual abuse, which it was huge, right? And this was now over 10 years ago that this happened. But the majority of what they make was from donations, but they also enjoy a charity status in Australia. And there's a very prominent person that was within the organisation that I spoke to recently, who was an elder for 10, 15 years and has decided to defect from the organisation and tell his story, who I actually knew personally from Canberra. And he has a very interesting story to tell about how things were covered up and how there was no reporting. And once the Royal Commission side of things came about, just how much of the hypocrisy came out from the organisation. Now, I feel like I do feel like at this point I need to rewind back to family history.
Okay.
Because it kind of it'll tell you a little bit more of a story about why I feel like it's such an important thing to draw light to.
Yeah, I feel like it's something affected you personally.
Yeah. So my father's father was, when we were young, we were like, hey, like, it's grandpa. We didn't think anything was different about the guy whatsoever. We'd see him every now and then and whatnot. But what's come to light later in life, and maybe that was in my early 20s, was that this guy was a serial pedophile.
Wow. And
he essentially, for want of a better term, made his mark on probably no less than 8 of my relatives.
Wow.
Like, my aunties, my father, my cousins, my sisters, everything you can think of. And in one of my auntie's cases specifically, we're talking about 11, 12 years of daily abuse.
Wow.
And
Was he convicted?
she was gripped by a lot of fear.
Yep.
And she did try and report to them at one stage, to one of the elders. And she was told to not be so ridiculous and don't tell lies. And that was the end of that. And so one of the really polarizing things was that when that guy died, and I can't call him my grandfather, but when that guy died, he was protected by my parents. They buried him, they had a funeral service, and nobody was told where he was buried or anything like that. He was protected. For what reason, I don't know. You know.
And he was part of the same organization, of course.
Of course.
Yeah.
And I mean, my father himself is still very, very much brainwashed by the entire organization and has always protected his father, regardless of any of the things that have come out because of that. So I think in light of that, hearing then after that about what was coming out about the Royal Commission into sexual abuse and what was happening in these organisations, the Royal Commission essentially said to these organisations, there's a number of them, and we're not just talking about Jehovah's Witnesses, but they were obviously my own personal experience, and you know, there's entire groups online that are dedicated just to Jehovah's Witnesses because of the cult mentality they have and what happens with them. And the Royal Commission essentially said to these organisations, we want you to agree that you're going to pay compensation to these victims because it happened under your watch and you guys didn't do the right thing. And
sounds like just a slap on the wrist, nothing more.
Yeah, well, yeah, 100% slap on the wrist.
Well, now it means you can do whatever you want, and you just can pay the price. It sounds like sexual services.
Almost, right? 100%.
Don't forget the prostitution is legal here. Maybe that's why. Now we can just pay for that.
Well, I mean, this is the real issue that comes up is that they asked this to happen from multiple different religions and people that had that charity status, which we know are most religions. And like, to be honest, not being totally anti-religion, just saying that there is a lot of things that have been called into question and covered up over the years. This is one of the things that needs to be drawn attention to, that they were asked to sign this, that they were going to pay compensation to victims. And the Jehovah's Witnesses were one of the organisations that refused to. And they pushed back, and essentially they were threatened with losing their charity status if they did not sign it.
Okay.
And that was the only thing that made them do it. So, I mean, it's a very polarizing type of thing to have gone through for your entire life and then say, oh, well, look, this organisation that you've been in for your entire life, who exclusively preaches love and truth above all things, has been hiding and using a charity status and been so insensitive about all the things they knew was happening for so long, and then also then pushed back against it and said, well, we're not going to pay compensation to people. What are you, mad?
But have they paid it eventually?
I can't speak to that. I can't speak to that. So I think it's an interesting thing. And look, I guess one of the things that I want to draw attention to is how divisive these organisations can be to families. That, you know, I hadn't spoken to my sister in that amount of time. I don't think I've spoken to my father at all since I was 18. Right, and I left home when I was 16. Right, and I left home because my parents decided that because I wasn't going to any of the Jehovah's Witnesses meetings, they would move all of my bedroom, which was upstairs, a townhouse type of scenario. They moved all of my stuff into the garage and said, in the middle of Canberra winter, you're going to sleep in the garage.
Wow.
If you're not going to go to our church meetings,
Wow.
you will sleep in the garage. And so I immediately just started, and I think you're either made for it or you're not. Majority of people these days are followers, and I certainly am not a follower. So I immediately started making those plans and said, I'm not doing this and that. And luckily enough, I had a friend that I'd made through work who said, mate, I'll pull up in my wagon and you can load your stuff in and away we go.
Okay, looks very interesting.
Never went back.
I understand after the Royal Commission,
Mm.
you probably did look very deeply into those cults and what they're doing. Do you think anything changed?
Nothing.
Nothing, still the same.
Nothing changed. The interesting thing is that in 2015 there was a police report that was given to Senator Bill Heffernan, and that police report detailed a list of 28 different names that were high-ranking members of the judicial system, including an ex-prime minister. They were all
Which is?
suspected in a pedophile ring.
Can you say the name?
He will not release the names. They've all been redacted. So nobody knows this list of 28 names. They've all been protected. And I think one of the things to draw attention to...
By the judicial system.
By the judicial system, by the governmental system. One of the things to draw attention to is...
Don't the public have the power to actually...
You would hope so.
To get those... Yeah, of course.
You would hope so. But it's one of the things since everything happened with 2020 and the lockdowns and whatnot, yeah, sure, I was at the protests and whatnot, and you could see that there was people power, but not the right kind of people power, in my opinion. It's one thing to have a protest, but
you need the decision makers.
You need the decision makers. And it's very, very easy. And like these guys that are in power know that whatever comes up into a headline is probably going to be off the headlines and out of everyone's mind in the next month anyway. So if they just ignore it, it's fine. The right amount of pressure has not been applied to any of the institutions of power to bring any of this to light. And until that sort of thing happens, this sort of stuff is just going to keep getting swept under the rug.
Yeah. From your opinion, what needs to happen to actually stop those abuses? Is there reform needed to happen, or is it people need to go outside? What needs to happen? As you mentioned, you set up a group of people who are trying to come together, maybe as witnesses. But as you said, the excuse is there are no witnesses. And of course, where there will be a witness from those abuses?
Look, for one, religions on the whole must lose any kind of charity status.
Yep.
Because, to quote something biblical, the root of all evil is money. Right? Money's not success. Right? But the root of all evil is money. And these guys are setting up these organizations. Remind me to tell you a story in a second about old Jehovah's Witness friend that I reconnected with. But they're doing it because of money. Why else would they do it?
But how different they are from the religion, from the Christianity? What is the difference?
Look, to be honest,
They refer to the Bible anyway.
There's 2 or 3 degrees of separation. And these guys swear that they're correct because they take a slightly different translation of the Bible, and that's what makes them the true religion.
But there are hundreds of translations.
Of course there are, right? So they're doing this because they know that there's their niche.
Mm.
They push their niche.
Yep.
And then in order to keep that niche, they make sure that in the Jehovah's Witnesses case, that the people that are in the organisation their entire lives are based around everyone that is in the organisation. Mm-hmm. And so they work on a real product of fear. Mm. So if you do step outside of the bounds, Val, you might have 5 or 6 different friends that you've had for your whole life because you've been in their religion. But if you're not going to follow their religion anymore, you know what, Val? You might be looking for 5 or 6 new friends because those guys will not be allowed to talk to you unless they're willing to give the religion away. And how many people do you know that are headstrong enough to be able to turn around to their entire upbringing and go, I'll forge my own path? I don't think many people are.
Of course not.
I don't think many people are. So I think it's a really interesting topic to try and draw attention to in Australia, because I think these guys are intensely secretive. And the elder that I actually spoke to recently, I watched one of his podcasts, and he drew a lot of attention to the fact that over the 15 years that he was an elder in the organisation, how disillusioned he became because the articles that were published throughout the organisation with the brochures and the leaflets and whatnot that were looked at all of these meetings weekly were all being researched by a team of people that were told what to research and to find something, even if there wasn't anything to find. They were told to find something that points to this. So there was research bias in everything that they were doing. Kind of draws a bit of a comparison to today's media, if you ask me. So
very interesting. And what was the story with your friend who you met?
Yeah. Look, I don't think that these guys work on a theory of just convincing people that they are the right religion. I think they work on a long-term system of brainwashing. And to this day, my father will still call my eldest sister and say, "Are you coming back to the religion?"
Yeah.
You know, when it's long gone. But it's just this long hope that they have, you know, because the Jehovah's Witnesses believe that if you aren't a true believer, you'll be destroyed at Armageddon when God decides that he's going to destroy the world. So there's a fear factor, right? And so a little while ago, I got an Instagram message from a guy that I was actually bestest of friends with when I was in the religion, when I was very, very young, 14, 15. And yeah, I was doing a painting job and he had hours to spare because turns out he decided to be a painter as well. And so we got on the phone and we started chatting. And as much as we still reconnected on that friendship level, his entire purpose of reconnecting was to try and convert me back to the organisation. It wasn't just, oh, dude, we spent so much time together. How cool was this? How cool was this? We did this and this and this. Oh, man, like I live in Port Macquarie. Let's meet up at some... No. It was, so what do you think about this scripture? What do you think about this scripture? I'm like, dude, I'm not interested in any of that.
Yeah.
You know that. I've told you about that. No.
What
It
about
was, I'm not going to put up, and he even said this to me, I'm not going to put up with anything that they call apostate or anything that is moved against the religion. And I was like, that's fine, I don't even want to talk about it.
What about the members numbers? Are they growing in Australia?
As far as I know, it seems to be pretty stagnant. Because I would like to think that people's minds are a little bit more opened up. In saying that, I do think that, make my prediction, but I do think the majority of the Australian public are not the brightest lot. I really don't think so, because I think that unless something, I call it the Australian apathy, unless something is right up here under your nose affecting your everyday life, Australians don't give a shit. They just don't care. And so I think that there's a real apathy. There's a we all know, like, Australians like to try, this and this priest, or pedos and kitty fiddlers and this and that and the other. But dude, that's real. And it's not just in the Catholic Church. It's not just in any of the other churches. It's in all of the other cult organisations that enjoy charity status throughout Australia. Those guys are protected because nothing has been done about it. Absolutely nothing.
Look, I believe the purpose of today's podcast is to build the awareness. People need to be aware of those organizations. They need to be aware where the kids go to. What is your other advice? What else can we do as a community?
That's a tough question. Because essentially that's... If I had the answer to that, then I kind of wouldn't still be in the position that I am after 18 years or 19 years of being well away from all that sort of stuff. That stuff still affects me now.
Yeah.
Still being in that control structure and trying to break out of it. What people need to do now, if their family members are looking to get involved, if they like the sense of community that it brings to them, you can get that in many other places.
Yeah, of course.
You do not need to get that through an organisation that is a cult.
Look, I just want to stress something. You're saying the word cult. I just want to remind you, we shoot another video with Miroslav when we were talking about the cult.
You totally did.
I just want to make it clear. It's a different connotation from different from True You Club I'm talking about.
He's giving you total shit. He's giving you total shit because there's nothing like that, right?
No, I actually called it a cult myself, as you remember.
Well, because I think it's in jest, right? Because you can say that having an ideology and having a real system of belief in yourself could sound culty, but these guys are having a real system of belief in an organisation that is controlling them in return.
No,
and I feel like that's completely different.
That's the difference.
That's exactly what it is. These people believe so blindly that if they went to a meeting on a Tuesday night and the talk there that night, the headline talk there that night was like, well, look, the world's coming to an end, guys. It's time for us all to throw ourselves off a cliff. there would be multiple people that would just go and do it. And this is what these people do. That's a vastly different scenario than having an organization that teaches you to believe in yourself. And that's a powerful thing. Because if you believe in yourself, then you can't be controlled.
Of course.
And control is one of those huge things that is being used across the world right now.
Of course. And as you mentioned, through the media, control the narrative through the fear.
Yeah.
Then you control everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. But what is it that drives these people to want to search for something that is going to control them? People are missing things in their lives. People want to fulfill something that they just, whether it's something that dates back to their childhood or whether they just don't have any hope, and these guys knock at their door and go, here's our magazine that's orchestrated by people that research things on the internet. Read this will give you hope.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what it is. People need to search for hope in other areas, man.
Yeah.
Turn off the TV. Don't listen. I have full respect for faith.
Yeah.
I think people need to have faith. And having faith is very different from following a cult.
Look, faith in themselves. I think that's what we need to stress about.
Yeah.
And again, I'm going to repeat myself again. Everyone has the unlimited potential. Unlimited. You don't need to rely on anyone else, not on Joe Blow, not on whoever, no one.
Yeah.
And if you know everything is within yourself, you don't need anyone else.
You don't need anyone
And
else.
fear destroys lives, 100%.
Yeah.
And look, why people are joining those organizations again, it's there is a hope for something better. They want to belong to certain groups. They just don't know the consequences of joining them. And when they join or when they're brainwashed, it's too late.
Look, let's say 40 years ago when my parents decided that it was a great idea to go and join these guys, if I had have said to them back then in some capacity, in 2024, you will be the only people in the entire family following that religion and everyone will hate you, I think they would have just laughed at me.
Oh, they would 100%. They'll probably put you in the garage straight away.
Well, maybe straight away, yeah. But I think it's one of the things to just draw attention to, because I think there's so many people that are affected by this, and it's not really anything that's shone a light on. A lot of people focus on things that are happening politically and a lot of things that are happening with war and this and that. But this is the silent war that's happening with people's minds, to be honest.
You know what I think it is? I think there is a solution. The solution is education. There needs to be an education reform.
Yeah.
What people absorb, even in kindergarten, if you teach people the power is here, you just need to think for yourself. Then they're prepared for the people who will come and knock at their doors.
Yeah. And this is the thing. This is one of the things that came out as a recommendation in the Royal Commission as well, that there needs to be a reform. There needs to be education from an early age, which is all well and good. It doesn't fix what's been done.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And so I think that there needs to be, to change what has happened. You can't go back and change the past.
No.
Right? And you also can't dwell on the past, but you can take it as a lesson. And to take all of that and go, okay, we're not going to repeat any of those things. We're not going to keep these organisations running. And hey, we're not going to protect them either. If they're going to be running as an organisation that receives donations, they should be paying taxes on that. Why are they a charity? Doesn't make sense, right? And these guys are so secretive about what they do.
But look, if they're public institutions, there should be no secrets from the public.
100%. But let me. One of the things that in this conversation that I had with my old mate from the organisation, he says to me, no, look, listen, things are changing. Things are changing.
What?
So-
They're introducing AI.
Also-
They're introducing AI.
AI God. No, but I was like,
No more touching.
tongue in cheek, and I said to him, "Okay, man, what's changed recently?" And he says, "Well," he was very excited about it. I could hear it in his voice. "Well, up until now, men of stature in the religion have not been able to have facial hair. Now, they're allowed to have beards."
Mamma mia.
And I was like,
Wow. That's a significant change.
"Okay." Yeah, he goes, "They've recognised that it's a sign of the times that men now, a lot of men have facial hair."
Didn't see Jesus had facial hair?
Dude, everyone back then had facial hair.
I think in some religion.
If they didn't
in
have
India,
facial
you
hair back
couldn't-
then,
you couldn't shave.
they get rocks thrown at them or something. There's no clean shaved dudes
Yeah.
back then.
There was no Gillette at the time.
No, but you know why? It's because these guys came about in like the 50s and 40s, and it was like, well, if you had a beard back then, you were a bit of a worldly guy, you know, like might have been a feather ruffler, and so they were like, no facial hair. If you had any kind of stature, if you were just a grunt, like if you just rock up at meetings and pick your nose, fine, have a beard.
You know what,
but
mate?
if you wanted to move anywhere and you wanted stature, you better shave that off, buddy.
Yeah.
You know. So, interesting. I
No,
had
you
a
know,
good old chuckle about
maybe these people had some issues with the vitamin D's.
that. You could have been.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Spent too much.
How big is their board? How many members are there at the top?
So,
Is it publicly available to look at the structure?
it never used to be.
There'll be CEO, I guess. There should be secretary. There should be advisory board.
It never used to be. They always told the narrative that the thing was discovered in 1914 or whatever by this J.F. Rutherford guy and blah, 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 and that they had appointed what they called a governing body. And nobody knew ever who the governing body was. It was just some mob in New York, right? Because their headquarters are in Brooklyn. And I think at some point, some JW in New York must have done one of those and gone, people aren't going to swallow this anymore. We can't just say that a message is coming from a governing body.
Yeah.
We need to have a front face. And so they started having a head of the governing body. And look it up for yourselves, folks. jw.org if you feel like vomiting on your computer screen. They put this dude out as their frontward face, and they have a full video production guy. They have a full set. And they get this guy to push out all of the content, right? So they gave this governing body a face, and they started putting names onto the website as to who's actually calling the shots. And these, again though, it's like having a corporation, except your board of directors of the corporation truly believe that their message is coming from God. You know what I mean? So
But do they truly believe? You think? Or there are commercial interests behind
can't
to study it?
speculate on that, man. I mean, maybe they do, maybe they don't. Maybe it's all just power and money. But the structure that they have built of behavior, mind control, and the way that they push people into doing certain things and teach people, and certainly the way that we've heard from these ex-elders about what they were told and how they were told to research topics that were to be published into the watchtowers that the Jehovah's Witnesses put out, it's mind-boggling. These guys were just sitting there researching the internet until they found something that said what they wanted it to say. It could have been some obscure article from shit fuck nowhere, but it said what they wanted.
Yeah.
So they took it, write it down, and they would submit these things to the head guys. The head guys would go,
Well done.
Well
Job
done.
is done.
job's done. But if you said something contrary, sorry mate, your article's not approved, you're not in.
Yeah.
And not to mention that all of these guys that were doing all of these things that were research-wise, none of them were paid. They just had their status. So they were doing full-time jobs in the religion.
And they were just the followers.
They were
What
just...
they were told, and purely because of the fear, they didn't question anything. Yeah, but I guess...
Sounds like the SS.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Except those guys were paid.
Like these... But do you want to get paid and do the same job?
But...
No difference, I guess.
Well, I mean, these guys, essentially what they have is their own Gestapo. They will go out and push whatever narrative that they want.
Yeah.
They have their own propaganda machine, and they don't have to give them a dime. Like, tell me, would you, if I said to you today, Val, I want you to join this religion, right? Now, this is the true structure. There's a couple of guys that are in charge and they're overseas. We don't really know who they are, but they put out videos every now and then. Now, the watchtowers come out, like monthly, and we don't really know who the authors are. We don't really know where they get the articles from, but it's approved by those guys.
Sure. Sounds like again.
This is
sounds like the newspapers.
This is how you have to live your life, okay? This is your morals.
That's how we live now.
This is your daily life. This is how you have to treat people, and these are the habits that you need to form.
Sure. That's how we live now, anyway.
Would you turn around to me and be like, "Let's go"?
The problem is again with the society we got used to follow to start with our parents. We didn't question anything. We just follow what our parents say, and then of course when we go to school, we listen to our teachers. Without questioning, maybe they're wrong. And that's where everything starts with the educational system, of course with the religion, because there is no difference. And again, by switching on the TV, how do you know if it's truth or not? How many times it was a lie of what we're listening?
Teachers are teaching a curriculum that's given to them from the corporate office.
Of course.
Right? So
How many books were destroyed to start with 200-300 years ago, were written?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so I think I do have hope though. Like, this has been a lot of doom and gloom and coming from a lot of shitty areas and speaking about a lot of dark shit. But I do have hope that I think that since the whole scamdemic and people being locked in their houses for no reason whatsoever scientifically, and people being forced to go and take completely experimental vaccines and this and that and the other.
And again,
I think it has
how many people did take this vaccine?
Many.
No, percentage-wise, majority.
So we're told.
You think minority?
I don't think minority, but I think it was a hell of a lot less than the 94%.
Maybe not 94,
we
but
were told.
way above 80%.
But extreme coercion is a powerful tool. If you said to somebody, your career is dust if you don't go and do this, and you got 4 kids sitting at home, what are you going to do? I don't blame people for doing it. I really don't. I didn't do it myself at all. And I never once strapped a mask around my face.
Yeah.
Not once. I went through airports and everything. I couldn't do it. But I think also because of the upbringing that I've had, I have inbuilt into me in extreme rebellion.
Yeah.
And if somebody says to me something that doesn't make sense, I go, fuck you.
Yeah.
Prove it to me or I ain't doing nothing, because I'm not taking your word for anything.
Yeah.
And so I think, coming back to the hope side of things, I think that there's a lot of the population that have been through hell. And this comes back to what you're doing for your charity and trying to help people, because I don't think the true effects of 2020, 2021 and 2 even have been felt by people yet.
Yeah. But we don't want to actually people go through hell in order to be resistant to something else which might come. We actually want to make sure the hell never comes.
100%. Absolutely.
We don't need to. We don't want people to be resilient to something which actually shouldn't happen in the first place.
No, it shouldn't happen in the first place at all. And essentially, the entire thing was a wealth transfer.
Yeah, of course.
Like every single government around the globe just went, cool. Here you go, Pfizer and Pharma. Take all of your multi-tens of billions.
But don't forget, no, it wasn't a wealth transfer. I would say the wealth transfer will come. This is still the transit time. They doubled the liquidity.
That's interesting.
And now, this is the time, with the next couple of years, when the real transfer will come.
How's that going to happen? Tell me.
How's it going to happen?
Yeah.
Look, people now believe in digital currency.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now they're thinking that's where the wealth is. It means they'll be transferring their assets from property, from illiquid assets into crypto. And again, we're talking about the new financial system, which will come in. We're talking about the system which will be very similar to Chinese system, which is very, very, very useful for any government. CBDCs, credit system, fantastic. Any politician would love it.
Especially the Labor government would be loving that.
Yeah, of course.
Considering the censorship bill.
But at the end of the day, Labor, Liberal, same thing.
Of course.
Money comes from the same pocket.
Yeah. Same evil, different label.
Yeah, exactly. But in terms of the introduction of the new financial system, look, in a totalitarian regime or in a communist countries, it's very easy to change the system. You just said it, and the new system is there. In the democratic countries, for you to introduce a new system, you need to create a fear, a crisis. You need to destroy the old one first. And I believe the way it's going to happen is now they'll pump up all the digital tokens which were created, which has zero value. There are no assets behind it.
Yeah.
Nothing's backed up. It's actually the same as fiat currency, no difference.
Of course.
Same thing.
Nothing's backed by gold.
Nothing
these
backed
days.
up yet. Not yet. It's coming soon. Yeah. But look, Bitcoin. Everyone believes in Bitcoin. Bitcoin. What is Bitcoin? 21 million units. Yeah. All right. There is.
But units of what?
Nothing.
But this is the entire thing. Tell me, Bitcoin's not a CIA op. Like there is nothing that actually gives it any kind of value whatsoever. You can't pay for shit with Bitcoin unless you're a multi-millionaire.
No, I can ask. We're talking about the wealth transfer, correct? All right. What is the wealth transfer? Is when you buy something, and then I buy it of you. That's the transfer, correct? Now people are looking, after the election of Trump, now people are looking, digital currencies, now Ethereum, Bitcoin, Solana, all these coins are now going to go through the roof. And they will. But the problem is who will buy them? General public. Because general public believe now this is the safest investment. Trump is at the power. He will now introduce the new laws because he'll back up. Don't forget, he will, in 4 years' time, the question is, he probably will get out of the office. Maybe early someone shoot him. Hope not, but whatever, doesn't matter at the end of the day.
You never know.
But how the transfer will happen is they'll now pump these tokens through the roof, and then they'll slam it. Who will lose? General public will lose.
Typical pump and dump scenario.
Pump and dump, absolutely.
Where the general public or the retail investors lose everything that they've put in their prospecting, and all of the guys that are in cahoots with each other will go, now's the time, dump it.
Correct. But also, what will happen when people will lose everything? Of course, people go on the streets. We lost everything now. I think we need to regulate now it. How are we going to regulate it? Let's introduce CBDC. We need now control. No, the government will come up with this idea. Or RBA. Guys, we have now a solution.
And there's so many broke people now that, you know what we need to have? We need to have a minimum income.
Of course.
Universal basic income. That'd be a great idea.
Amazing. Considering how many people will lose their jobs with AI,
And we can
with
track
automation.
everything that people buy. And,
of course.
Oh my goodness.
Credit system will to follow straight after.
That's not a
With
system of control at all.
Yeah, with the digital IDs. Anyway, look, we know what's coming, and I believe we can elaborate on this topic.
We can talk about systems of control as much as you want, my friend.
And I think we will. We'll have probably another episode,
100%.
another podcast on that.
Absolutely.
Look, thank you very much for coming. I'm really sorry to hear that story that it affected you. I didn't know that.
Hey, you know what? If it didn't happen, I wouldn't be here right now.
Yeah.
It's the way you got to think about it.
Look, I hope people learned something. They took your story seriously, and they will draw their own conclusion. What they need to do in their own circle, in their own family, with the children.
Think freely.
Yeah.
Think of the consequences that marrying yourself to an ideology comes with. Self-belief is different from religious belief.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks,
again.
man. Cheers.
Thank you.